The following clip is from the North to South Show, live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we talk SEC football everything. Now, we'd love to have you out for next show, but for now, hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy this clip. The Tennessee Volunteers. I mean, what else can we say about this team? Just been ups and downs, especially for the fan base. The last, what do you want to call it? The last decade, really, but like specifically talking about the last 5 years, like Tennessee has had the talent in the recent years to do something really special, and they just haven't been coached well. They haven't done this, they haven't done that. They haven't got that big signature win that they need to be one of those premier teams in the SEC. And last season, they move on from Jeremy Pruitt, obviously, going on to Josh Heupel coming into this 2021 season. And Tennessee's kind of been, quote-unquote, the forgotten team in the SEC, because you see this as a team in Tennessee with a lot of history, a team that is always in the conversation. They might not be the favorite all the time, but they're usually in the conversation for the SEC East and everything like that. And Tennessee has just slipped through the cracks, and I think it has to do a lot with just the narrative of Tennessee this season that, yeah, their program is in a bad spot. Their program has been in a dumpster fire for a long time. But why I want to talk about my expectations for Tennessee is because even as a South Carolina Gamecocks fan, like, I'll be straight honest with you guys, Tennessee is probably my least favorite team in all the SEC, even more than Georgia, even more than Florida. I still hate Clemson more than them, but if we're talking SEC, I really don't like Tennessee. But looking at this team this year, I don't think that this team is trash. I don't think, all those people on social media and everything like that that come out and say, this Tennessee team is terrible, this team is like a 2-3 win team. I don't think Tennessee is that bad. I don't think Tennessee is a contender for the East this year. I don't think that they're close to being a contender for the East this year, but I don't think they're a 3-win team. So that's why I want to get into my expectations for Tennessee this season. So obviously, Josh Heupel, I mentioned it already, coming in as a new head coach for the Tennessee Volunteers this season. Now, he's coming from UCF, who one of the more premier and one of the bigger names in the group of five. So you're obviously getting a good guy there. In my opinion, this team is starting from ground zero. What else can you say for Tennessee? You look at the guys that have gone to the NFL draft or the guys who have transferred. I know Tennessee fans don't want to hear about the guys who have transferred because basically Tennessee was a farm team for your Alabamas, your Oklahomas, all those other big-time programs that just want to go out and grab more talent as they go on their championship runs, and Tennessee is just left in the dust, being the quote-unquote farm team that they were last year. 2 of 12 starters returning on offense. Not a good look at all there. And defense is a bit better. Still not great. 5 of 12 returning starters on defense. Tennessee, again, I said they won't be the favorite in the East this year. But what I want to talk about, starting off with the offense more specifically, is I don't think this offense is going to be half bad. The defense is going to be a different story, and we're going to talk about that. But I don't think this offense is going to be half bad. First of all, I want to talk about the quarterback position. You have 4 guys who I'd say the average or the just above average SEC fan would be able to name at least 3 or 4 of the Tennessee quarterbacks that I'm about to name here. You got Harrison Bailey, you got Hendon Hooker, you got Joe Milton, and you got Brian Maurer. So obviously Harrison Bailey and Brian Maurer have been quarterbacks at Tennessee before. They have played in games. They have done all that. So if you're a Tennessee fan or if you have watched a game against Tennessee, there is a decent chance that you have seen either one of those players play. Obviously, you're looking at Garantano and you're looking at Trout, also being 2 of the other quarterbacks for Tennessee in the past however many years, but Harrison Bailey and Brian Maurer have played for Tennessee. Now you look at Joe Milton and Hendon Hooker as well. Hendon Hooker, if that name sounds familiar, it's because he was the starting quarterback at Virginia Tech last season. And if the name Joe Milton sounds familiar, it's because he was the quarterback at Michigan last season, towards the end of the season. My partner on this channel, Birdie, will have some strong opinions about Joe Milton because he is a Michigan fan. He was through the moon about Joe Milton. He thought he was the next Cam Newton and everything, and then his opinions changed severely on Joe Milton after he actually saw him hit the field at Michigan. But what my kind of point of this is, you have talent at the quarterback position, and I feel like that's been a real struggle for Tennessee the last couple of years, is finding that guy at quarterback, finding the consistency in the passing game, because I think that's where Jeremy Pruitt really struggled. Was this Tennessee passing game was never anything special under him, and I think that that's what Josh Heupel is going to have to come into Knoxville and do for this team to get back to where they want to be. competing for an SEC East, competing for an SEC championship, pushing for a playoff spot, making a playoff spot, and hopefully the end goal for every coach in Power 5 is going to be win a national championship. So that's where Josh Heupel is going to try to get to, but you got to start somewhere, and you got to start with a passing attack. I think you got some really good guys. Zeroing on the two guys that I really like as the favorites to be the starting quarterback, Hendon Hooker. I think Hooker has still some work to do with his arm, but I think he has a lot of upside also with his rushing ability. He's really good in his ground game. Rushed for a ton of touchdowns at Virginia Tech, a lot of rushing yards, and he is also decent in the passing game. So Hendon Hooker, I feel like you put him in. I think he's a guy who's ready to start at Tennessee and do some damage, be an impact player as soon as you start on the field. I think he will be. I'm not saying he's going to be mistake-free, but he knows how to play college football games because he has been playing at Virginia Tech prior years, and I don't think Harrison Bailey has played the most at Tennessee. He's got in some games and everything like that, but I don't think that he's played more than Hendon Hooker has. And the other guy I just mentioned his name, Harrison Bailey. I think Harrison Bailey has the arm that you want for Tennessee. I like his accuracy. I like his deep downfield accuracy especially. I like his arm especially, and you look at where his weakness is, I think Hendon Hooker just has the edge over him, rushing and making his own plays and improvising and everything like that. But those two guys especially are my two favorites for the Tennessee starting quarterback position. You throw either one of those guys in there, and I think you're looking at a pretty good starting point for this Tennessee offense to build that passing game. Obviously, you're going to like Harrison Bailey more for building a passing game, but if you want to talk about offensive production, with a running game that I think this year for Tennessee will be a bit weaker because you lost a lot of talent and everything like that, which we're going to get into a second, having a quarterback that can run would really, really help. So I think the quarterback position is honestly going to be pretty good for Tennessee this season. Looking at receiving-wise as well, talking about Jeremy Pruitt again, getting the ball to your outside playmakers was something that, your outside talented playmakers, should I say, was something that was a huge struggle for Jeremy Pruitt the last couple of seasons. He was at Tennessee, and that's what Heupel, he's already come out and said, I'm going to get the ball in the hands of my playmakers on the outside, especially because we have to. If we want to have any kind of threat to any of these teams, like your Georgias, like your Floridas, like your Alabamas, teams like that, if you want to pose any threat to them, you got to have some guys on the outside who actually get the ball and have the stats to show that they get the ball in their hands. You could have Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, throw all of those guys in a receiving core, but if you can't get the ball in their hands, what good are they? So Josh Heupel is really going to focus on and getting the ball into his playmakers' hands on the outside, and lucky for him, he has a couple of good guys out there. I look at Jalen Hyatt and I look at Velus Jones Jr. to be the two guys to lead this Tennessee receiving core. I think Jalen Hyatt especially is going to be a breakout guy this season. He is due for a breakout season at Tennessee. Tennessee has had some pretty good receivers the last couple seasons. I look back to Jawan Jennings. He was a really good receiver. I remember he always played well against South Carolina. You look at Palmer, obviously last season getting drafted. I'm pretty sure he went to the Chargers. He's Canadian like me, so I'm a big Palmer fan. Josh Palmer, represent Canada. So I think the receiving core for Tennessee this season is going to be just fine. You got talented guys. I think you got two quarterbacks. You got a whole group of quarterbacks. I didn't even mention Joe Milton or Brian Maurer, but I think it's going to be between Hendon Hooker and Harrison Bailey. You got guys who can get them the ball. So I think you got a pretty good starting point in the passing game to get it going for Tennessee. Now, the rushing game is a different story. You lose a lot of your O-line. You lose running backs. You obviously lose Eric Gray. You'll lose Ty Chandler, who are your two leading rushers last season. You're left with like Jabari Small. He's probably going to be your main running back this season. Didn't get the most touches last year. I think it's going to be a struggle, especially with an offensive line that lost 3 starters. It's going to be tough for Tennessee this season in the running game. So I think the passing game, if Tennessee wants to have any success, if they want any chance at a bowl game, I think the passing game is going to have to be there 110%. Now looking at the defense this season, I think this is the part of this team that is really going to be frustrating for Tennessee fans this season. First of all, let's talk about the good part of this defense. I think the best part of this defense will be the rushing game. This rushing game that was 5th best this rushing defense. The rushing defense that was 5th best in the SEC last season, obviously getting Butler and Middleton back is going to be huge for Tennessee. I think that's the strength of this defense, 110%, your rushing defense. Looking at passing, it was a really, really rough spot for Tennessee last season, and losing guys, especially like Bryce Thompson, guys like that, it is going to be really, really tough to replace all that kind of stuff for Tennessee, especially when they were towards the bottom of the SEC in passing defense last season. The linebackers got hit really hard. Obviously, you lose Henry To'oTo'o. You lose a bunch of other talented guys at the linebacker position. This linebacker room is definitely towards the bottom in the SEC, and I also think the secondary is. So I'm looking at the passing game, again, being the weakness for Tennessee's defense this season. Now comes kind of the part where we talk about expectations, because that's what this video is titled, obviously. Expectations for Tennessee, or my expectations for Tennessee in 2021, and I was kind of talking about in the beginning how I don't think this team is trash, and I really look at this offense, and that's where I find a bit of confidence that this team won't be trash, and a confidence enough to come out here and say, I don't think Tennessee's going to be half bad this season. They're going to be obviously fighting for a bowl game. It is going to be on the cusp. It's going to come down to the last games for Tennessee to decide if they are a bowl team or not. So I have them going around that like 5-6 range this season. I think that they got wins against, they start off against Bowling Green. I think that's a win. You got Pitt. Then you got some other Group 5 team. I can't remember. I think it's Tennessee Tech you have after that. If I pull up my schedule right here, just give me a second. So they start off against Bowling Green. Then you have Pitt. Then you have Tennessee Tech. You go to Florida. You go to Missouri, South Carolina at home, Ole Miss, at Alabama off, at Kentucky, Georgia, South Alabama, and Vanderbilt. I think you find your wins at your guaranteed wins, South Alabama, Vanderbilt, Bowling Green, and Tennessee Tech. And then from there, I think you have a good chance you're at least splitting Pitt and South Carolina, in my opinion. And then from there, if you just pick up a win, I don't think it's going to happen, but if you pick up a win at Missouri, at Kentucky, I think those are two tough games, especially that you have to travel. I think Ole Miss at home is going to be difficult. Georgia's always going to be tough, difficult. And then at Alabama, I think is out of reach. But you just win the games that you're supposed to win. That's going to put you at 4 wins. Then you've got 2, in my opinion, toss-up games against South Carolina and Pitt. Get both those games at Neyland Stadium at home. So there's a good chance that this team makes a bowl game. Now, it all depends. I really feel it all depends on how this defense performs, because I think the offense will put up enough points to give Tennessee a chance to win Saturday in and Saturday out. At least I hope. And I think a lot of Tennessee fans hope that this offense has the talent enough to produce something offensively to do that. But the defense is where it scares me. The defense, especially the secondary, when you go up against huge passing attacks like your Georgias this season, like your Floridas, like your Missouris this season, like your Ole Misses, like your Alabamas, teams like that, how will Tennessee hold up? It's a huge question mark. It is a massive question mark. And even against like your Pitt, your South Carolina, games like that, which are toss-ups to me at the moment, and huge games that will be vital into Tennessee making a bowl game or not, how is this secondary going to perform? How is this linebacker corps going to perform? Because both of these teams won't just run the ball the whole time. Yes, I know that's your strength and everything for Tennessee, but you're going to have to stop the pass at some point if you want to be successful and make a bowl game. So right now, my expectation is Tennessee going around that 5-6 range. And why I wanted to make this video is because Tennessee isn't going to be a terrible team. I think any team in the SEC is going to have talent, and I think Tennessee does have a lot of talent. It's all going to be dependent on how Josh Heupel and this whole coaching staff is able to come in and really change the complexion of the offense. Again, get the ball in the hands of your playmakers, especially. You got to get a passing attack going. You got to gel back together that O-line. You got to get some running game going. I think if you get the passing game going, I think the running game will come along, because if you get a passing game going, that is what teams are going to know you for, and that's what their main focus is going to be on, and that opens up so many holes for the rushing game and everything like that. And then defensively, just being able to stop the pass is my main concern for Tennessee. So